To set the scene a little bit, Montgomery County, prosperous, mostly bedroom community for many, many people who live in that area to work in Washington, D.C. Adjacent to it, Prince George's County. Those are for today the crime scenes. At this point, let's bring our justice correspondent, Pete Williams, back into the conversation for viewers who may have joined us during or after the press conference. Pete, set the scene here. What we have, correct me if I'm wrong, is a double fatal, two different locations?
From today's events, yes, Brian, and then the possibility that it's connected to yet a third one last night. But what's happened today is at about 11 o'clock this morning, about 11:10, a man approached a woman in the parking lot of the Westfield shopping mall in Montgomery County, Maryland, and according to witnesses, asked her some questions. She continued to walk away. He shot her. Two people who may be unrelated to her came to her to give aid. They were shot, and we've just been told now by the police officials that one of those two men who came to her aid has died. So one fatality from the first shooting today. About 35 minutes later, there was a report of a second shooting in another shopping mall also in Montgomery County, the Aspen Hill shopping mall. It's about a 35 to 40-minute drive away, so it's possible the two could have been carried out by the same person. A woman was shot in the parking lot of that mall outside of a grocery store, and she has died. So two fatalities out of four people shot and wounded today. So that's one thing we learned out of this news conference today. The second scene that they're looking at, whether they're connected, what he's talking about is the picture you see on the left side of your screen. This man, Eulalio Tordil, 62 years old, an officer who is now on administrative leave assigned to the Federal Protective Service, is considered a suspect in the shooting of his estranged wife in the parking lot of a high school in Beltsville, Maryland. That's the other county you were talking about, Prince George's County, Maryland. That happened about 3:30, 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Police say she was at the school picking up her children. These two had been in a custody battle. She had filed a protective order, a restraining order against him earlier this year. There was a dispute about custody. Because of that restraining order, he was put on administrative duties and then administrative leave in March. He was required to surrender his badge, his credentials, and his weapons. But nonetheless, police believe he still had guns and that they accuse him of shooting his estranged wife last night. So the first question is he the person of interest in these two shootings that you see on the right side of your screen today at two separate shopping malls in the adjacent county? As you heard the police say, they're not confirming that, but they're actively looking into it. I think it's fair to say that that is their working assumption at this point. That's certainly what we've been led to believe. But he also said tantalizingly at the end of the news conference that there are differences between today's shootings and yesterday's that he can't get into. So they're not conclusively linking the two. They're operating on that assumption, but they can't say for certain. And that's frankly what we're being told in non-public sources as well.
Pete, this is a good time probably to talk about what the Federal Protective Service is. It's safe to say that for the millions of people who will make Washington, D.C. a stop on summer vacation this year, they will see them without particularly noting that it's them. What is their job and how big a force?
Right. So Washington, D.C., as you know from your time here, is awash, really, in law enforcement organizations. In addition to the local police department we have, which is called Metropolitan Police Force, there are a number of other federal agencies. Capitol Hill has its own security. There's the Secret Service that does the White House. Many federal agencies have their own. The Federal Protective Service it's part of the Department of Homeland Security under the recent government reorganization, and it's responsible for building security at building entrances. You often see their cars sitting outside foreign diplomatic posts here. That's their job. His responsibility, we're told, was an inspector with the Federal Protective Service, and he was basically overseeing the contractors that the government hires. Many of the people you see that look at your bags or run you through metal detectors when you enter federal facilities are contract employees, and his job was to oversee them, we're told.
Okay. They often look like, to the untrained eye, like the uniform members of the U.S. Secret Service, down to the fact that they drive white squad cars. I think
Right.
their officers on post wear white uniform shirts. A lot of the iconography is not dissimilar.
Right, but you will see them driving around town in cars that say Federal Protective Service, and probably that's the only thing that you would be able to tell the difference.
All right, Pete, thank you. Jim Kavanaugh, former special agent in charge of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Administration, is with us. Notably, Jim was around during the Washington, D.C. sniper case. It has nothing to do with this case, Jim, except speaking of iconography, these live pictures of shopping center and mall parking lots in this part of the world, for those of us who were around then, can only bring back one memory.
No, that's right, Brian. You know, I can't say enough about the Montgomery County Police Department and its detectives. And of course, the law enforcement in the whole capital region. Prince George's County is involved in this too. And the surrounding counties and state police in Maryland will be involved. Of course, federal partners as well. So you got top cops here. They got top departments, great detective bureaus. They're on it, and they're trying to get the answers that you and Pete were just discussing. I think the biggest one is it the same guy? And you posited that right at the top. And that is the big question. And the surest way for them to do that is if they've recovered spent cartridges at these three scenes. Because if they can match that up, then the answer is, you know, it's a certainty if it's the same weapon. So if they know that, then they can focus with the public that this is the guy we want, this is the guy on a spree. The second most important thing I'd be looking at as a commander is that witness that's alive, the female from the first shooting in Bethesda that was shot in the shoulder, and she had some discussion with the shooter. What were the questions he asked her? That would be critical to knowing his mindset, because we know he's suicidal. This guy from Beltsville, anyway, that killed his strange domestic partner because he said suicide by cop or whatever. But he didn't commit suicide if it's him. He lived all night, and he showed up again. So suicide always has some ambivalence to it, and they may want to do it, but they don't want to do it right now. So what's he trying to do? Was he trying to just shoot the woman? You know, did he say, I hate you? Or did he say, I want your car? Did he steal a purse in Aspen Hill? There's some questions here that the commanders can use to try to see, where's he going? Was he after a cell phone? Did he get a cell phone? Did he get money, cash? You know, we need to see the answers to those questions, and they'll be putting that together really quick.
And Jim, one more question about cop stuff on two fronts. Number one, I'll go out on a limb and estimate that most uniformed police officers in this country have an off-duty weapon. And number two, license plate readers that are on a lot of police vehicles in this country, most of them unknown to the public. They present like radar guns. I think a lot of people assume they're radar guns, are hugely helpful when you're looking for this, in this case, a silver rental car.
Well, you're exactly right, because those computerized tag readers can just, you know, alert an officer, a trooper, you know, maybe even sitting on a highway in Pennsylvania, if this guy gets real mobile, that he's wanted or that's a stolen vehicle. Of course, the danger is that this guy can go out, get some isolated motorist, kill them, take their car, and nobody knows the person's even missing for hours and hours and hours. And then he can go somewhere else. So even if that car were to go by past a uniformed vehicle, there's no alert because it's not a wanted car. So he's operating where he can be hours ahead, and that can be a deadly combination for him. So you got to kind of try to get ahead of them, you know, is what we tried to do in the D.C. sniper case. Try to get ahead of them, and you've got to really get inside their head to do that. And that's what the detectives are trying to do right now. And him being a police officer, you know, he has some skills, he has training, some knowledge. You know, it doesn't mean he's the end-all, be-all. He's not Rambo. But he does have more than the average citizen or even average criminal. And he may leverage that. He may be traveling around without a cell phone, Brian, because he knows they can be tracked.
Yeah,
so we can use
absolutely.
small things, small things that may help them stay free for a little while.
Jim Kavanaugh, part of our coverage, and I mentioned the D.C. sniper case. He was deputy incident commander back then for the ATF, so he was intimately involved with it. Jim also made the point in our coverage in the last hour that for those watching too many cop shows, a semi-automatic like a 9mm will eject shells, hugely helpful as crime scene evidence where a revolver will not. Let's go to the scene where we just saw the briefing. Michael Rosenwald of the Washington Post has been kind enough to join us by telephone from the Montgomery Mall. Michael, all these scenes look familiar to people who live and work there or have spent any time there, but let's start with conservative drive time between today's two shootings, the Giant Food, which is so well known to people over in the Aspen Hill Shopping Center, and the Montgomery Mall.
Thanks, Brian. You're looking at 15 or 20 minutes. If you're in a hurry, maybe you could do it even faster. But these are locations that are certainly within proximity of each other, right outside the Beltway.
Is there anything, often after an official briefing, we can buttonhole a police captain or a PIO or a commander? Is there anything you've learned, not to scoop your paper, but over and above what was just shared with the news media at the briefing?
Well, that's an interesting observation, Brian, and you're right about buttonholing them. The problem in the buttonhole situation here is that it's a pouring rain. So most of the officers fleed to their mobile command post. So it's a very wet situation. The only officers who are really outside are the forensic ones who are trying to make heads or tails of the physical evidence, given the driving rainstorm that we're in.
So at minimum, again, to use cop talk, after yesterday's shooting in PG County in Beltsville, we have an EDP, an emotionally disturbed person who is out and among the people. And I guess questions 1 and 2 for cops today is any linkage. Were these random? Is he going after people from his life? Are there any fibrous, even tenuous ties between yesterday and today, correct?
Well, the incident last night obviously, was family tie. These incidents today seem more random than that. In fact, the spokesman was asked, "Is this kind of like the D.C. sniper situation when this area was terrorized by those two men who were shooting people randomly?" And the officer's answer was, there's some similarities, but there are differences that he couldn't discuss. They do say that it's unclear whether or not he had any connection to any of the people he shot at the mall or potentially at the other location. So it does seem to be a little bit different in terms of last night, to today.
Michael Rosenwald, thank you very much for joining us on a pouring rain day here along the East Coast from what we now know has become a murder scene. This and one other parking lot, along with yesterday's attack, that makes 3, and that's what police are chasing down right now. For those just joining us, there are, sadly, of course, murders in this country every day. This is of a special note for several reasons. Its proximity to the national government, the seat of power, and the fact that these shootings today may be tied to a member of law enforcement, not just law enforcement, but an arm called the Federal Protective Service, a uniformed division, part of the Department of Homeland Security. Obviously, this is a changeable investigation, a changeable circumstance. In addition to friends of ours like Michael, we have our own correspondents and crews there, and we will keep you up to date on this story, of course, throughout the day and the evening. Erica Hill continues our political coverage after a break.